Okay, I think we're up and running here. Hello, this is Nick coming back at you with a tutorial in Blender. It is Thursday morning, if I'm not mistaken, and today we're going to be talking about the basics of lighting. And this is kind of important because if you're going to be doing anything 3D related and you start rendering it, which we'll talk about in a little bit, you need light. No light, can't see anything. So let's go ahead and jump into Blender here, which I already have on my screen. We're just going to first make a really basic scene, just something we can arrange, like maybe like a tabletop with some stuff. So I'm actually going to select everything and just delete it. And let's go ahead. I guess I could have used the cube, but that's okay. Alright, so we're going to just kind of scale this out a little bit. Let's make this a little smaller. Cool. And let's bring this up. Come on, get up there, you. And let's create some table legs here. I got my my usual synth wave going, so I'm quite in a peppy mood. I wonder if I can actually. I'm actually gonna go ahead and just grab. Oh, well, let me do it. I gotta do it in this mode. There we go. That's what I wanted. Cool. And I'm just gonna go ahead and jump into a camera view here. Go ahead and just pop these guys down. Now, I want to duplicate this, but I want to keep the same mesh data. So if you don't know what that is, I think it's Alt-D. Yeah. So one of the cool things about Blender is it tries to keep the data. Or let me back up here. So in the past, I've talked about like what all these objects are made out of, which you haven't seen those videos. Go ahead and check out our modeling a spaceship. I talk about this in a little bit more detail. I'll put a link in the description below. But basically, as you know, these are all made up of vertices, edges, and faces. However, one thing you can do is have objects share data. So because I duplicated this and have it sharing the same basic data, any changes I make on one are going to alternate to the other. So this is just a little something to speed up my workflow in case I want to make changes to these table legs later. So we're just going to move these guys over. All right, cool. So we've got a table. Let's actually go ahead and just add in a ground plane here as well, which we're just going to scale up. And let's put some stuff on this table here. So let's go ahead and see what kind of cool stuff we can add. So, I mean, whoop, nope. Let's actually reselect the sphere, pull that up. We'll make this a little bit more sizable. And another thing we're going to do is we're going to smooth this out with a subdivision surface modifier, which I go over what that is in a different tutorial. Just going to pop up on one, and then we're going to just right-click and smooth shade it so it looks all nice and shiny. Now, one thing we can do with light or objects is a lot of people are worried about having them intersect like this. You actually do want it to intersect just a little bit so that it's guaranteed to be on the item. You know, just enough that you can't really tell. And the reason for this is you don't want to create a scenario where you have it hovering just a little bit above and then there's no contact shadow. So it's actually better to have it intersect a little bit. No one's going to be able to tell, like, unless they have a camera going through the table, which is physically impossible. Where did I hear? There was some movie that some guy was just like, it's physically impossible. I can't remember what that's from, though. So let's add in a box here. We're pretty much just going to work with primitives, but we're going to... Actually, let's go ahead and add in a camera now. I'm going to go ahead and split my screen across here. We're going to jump into camera view. And let's go ahead and find a nice angle to shoot this table at here. Boopity boop boop. I think I have to back it off, though, quite a bit. Let's go into top view and do it this way. Splitting this again, and we're going to... Yeah, there we go. Maybe I'll actually move this closer, and I'll have it maybe at a lower angle than I thought. maybe come back over a little bit. Because one thing that's very important about when you're doing this is making sure that things are appearing correctly in camera. You know, you can keep modeling until, you know, the sun goes down and, you know, and keep going, but does it matter if it shows up, if it does or does not show up on camera? And the general answer to that is no, it doesn't matter. So why would you spend all that time working on something that is not going to be seen? So I'm just trying to figure out a good camera angle here so we capture the idea this is a table. I think we're going to go with this angle for right now. Oh, I wanted the red one. Thank you. All right, so I don't really like that angle, though. I'm being very picky here. Because if my camera angle changes, that may significantly alter the way that we arrange our items. You know, this is often like when you're working in animation, you want to figure out, you want to like do a basic blocking and figure out exactly what it is you're going to be doing. Because if that changes later, then you may end up doing way more work trying to get everything to work. I wonder if I can actually slide the table over here. I'm actually just going to parent these legs to this table real quick. So that way if I have to move things, I don't have to redo everything. Alright, that's kind of cool. I'm just going to pick up the camera a little bit. Alright, and we're actually going to move this ground plane back just a smidge. Scale it up a little bit more. And you know what I'm going to do? We're going to go ahead and actually add some walls here. Because realistically, if we're inside, there should be some doors that I'm actually going to pop this back up now and come back over here. Because I talked about this a little bit more in my how to texture tutorial from, I think it was last week, where we talked about render engines. And because the light is physically based, in other words, it's going to be very accurate to lighting, then it makes sense to slightly recreate a scene that is realistic. So if we're inside, there should be a wall. Move that over there. I'm going to guess this is somewhere in the corner. It's probably pretty close to the corner. Nope, you stay. So I guess I don't need to make it quite this large then. Move this back to the center. Whoa, okay, I did not want to do that. We're going to duplicate this. Move it. Rotate it by... Nope, wrong axis. Now, the reason that I'm not adding thickness to these walls is simply because I don't need to. I'm not going to see the opposite side of the wall. Unless, you know, the camera's going to walk through a doorway and then go down a hallway or something. I don't have to make this physically thick like the table here. Anything you can do to save on some geometry is always a good idea. I'm going to duplicate this, and we're also going to add in a ceiling. No, don't do that. R-Y. Why? No! Alright, we're going to do it this way. Or 0. There we go. So this is going to act as our roof here. Now, depending on how things shake out, I may actually take this off. It all depends on how the scene shakes out. In fact, because it may actually make it tougher for us to get lights in there the way we want. So this one I'm kind of on the fence about. We'll kind of see how it goes. In the meantime, though, let's take this box. We're going to scale this up. Maybe I can like make this into... I'm thinking like this is like a workshop sort of thing. So maybe I can scale this around. But I don't want to spend a ton of time on this because we want to get to the lighting. So we'll do just a little bit of modeling here. There we go. We got a box. Yeah, we'll like put that over by the corner there. Well, we gotta move that down first. Maybe what I'll do is, because that looks good in the camera view. It doesn't have to actually be in the corner, but let's go ahead and pop in Suzanne here. And let's also give her a subdivision surface, and we will smooth that out. Yeah, come on, you. Get in there. I don't know why he's got a, you know, plastic monkey head in a box, but maybe it serves some purpose. I don't know. Yeah, there we go. And we'll pop. Hey, come on. I'm actually going to make sure we don't accidentally select any of the scenery here. I'm going to go ahead and go into my objects. Come on. Where is it? It's under... Is it this one or this one? I forget. I'm trying to remember. Select. Nope. Transform. Origins. Parents. That's rendering stuff. That's render passes. Global stuff. Oh, here we go. The object details. They changed the details some time back. I'm gonna go ahead and just lock this so I don't accidentally select it. Actually, I want to stop it so I don't move. I'm gonna do that a different way actually. So I'm going to create a new collection here. This is a really nice addition to Blender that they didn't have in the old ones, where you can create sort of containers to put everything in. So I'm going to say no move, and we're going to move all of this into here. And basically what I can do here is I can either turn that container off, or I should be able to lock it. Oh, it actually won't let me do that. I seem to recall there was a way for me to avoid that. Scenes. Nope, that's not that. Oh, there we go. Restrictions. So, cool. So now I can add that. All right, so it's not a collection thing. All right, so basically what that does is there's a toggle here that will allow me to turn on what I can select or not. So I might as well just get this, move this, get rid of this collection then, because it's not really going to do much. Delete. So now I can actually turn off things that I can no longer select in the viewport. It just makes it a little bit easier. So we're going to turn that off. And might as well get the table legs here, which are parented. Boop, 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 boop. All right, so now I can only touch stuff on the table, which we may disable in a little bit. But let's go ahead and get Suzanne in her box here. Maybe I'll have her resting on the box. Yeah, let's put her in the box. Why not? Suzanne, get in the box, please. We can make that a little larger. Let's rotate her toward camera a little bit, though. And rotate. Make that a little larger if need be. My nose. Itchy, itchy. You know what? I'm actually just going to move her out to the table because I like how she's smiling. So I want to make sure that that is easily viewable. I'll put her... Let's see. Let's rotate this a little bit and rotate that. Let's get this on local so this is easier. Okay, and we'll just rotate this up a little bit more. All right, there we go. Let's put some random shapes in the box. That's going to be a lot easier and just speed this up here. How about an icosphere? Why not? Whoop. Maybe we can put a couple. See how that looks here. All right, I do have to get one more down here. Otherwise that looks like it's floating, and we don't want that. It also depends on what the... Yeah, that looks pretty good. I might put one more over here. It depends on how the light falls. You know, we may have to adjust things a little bit. Let's see. Let's throw in a cylinder for good measure, because why not? Alright, that definitely needs a subdivision surface, though. Alright, and we gotta... No! Don't do that. Talk about what I'm doing here with edge loops in another tutorial with the subdivision surface. So if you're curious about that, definitely encourage you to go check that out. And let's grab... come on. Cool. And let's get these guys down here. And let's go back to camera view and just see where we can place this guy. Maybe we'll rotate it onto its side by 90 degrees here. Whoop. Let's actually scale it down, but make it longer. Nope, not what I wanted. Scale X, I think it is. Nope, how about Y? Yeah, there we go. And a cone is always a good way to go. How are we doing here? All right, I got a couple minutes before my promised time is up. Let's get, why not? Let's add in a Taurus. Oh, I gotta stretch. I'll actually adjust my camera a little bit. There we go. And what was I doing? Q, plane. Oh, yeah, Taurus. And let's actually have this... Well, we're definitely going to have to add in a subdivision surface for this, for sure. And we're going to smooth that out. And let's put this down here. Kind of create some interesting interactions here. Nope. All right, there we go. I have to twist it a little bit. Cool, and maybe we'll duplicate this and put one on the other side. And maybe have it like rotate a little bit. There we go. Give it a little bit more interest, but we'll have to pick that up though. It's a little too much on in the table. Okay. Maybe I will move this. Let's move Suzanne up a little bit. Move these guys back. Because we got her on the thirds here, which is some film related stuff. Alright, so we have a little scene here. It could probably use a little bit more work, but, you know, we'll work with what we got for right now. Let's actually go ahead and start introducing the different types of lights we have. And I'm just going to kind of breeze through these. We can go through more details in an actual class, but basically you're going to go down here to the lights, and we've got 4 of them. We've got the point, the sun, the spot, and the area. Now, let's go ahead and pop in a point light. And let's just pick this up here. Now, this scene is simple enough. We shouldn't have any troubles with the Eevee render engine. So we should be able to change this over to... is this viewport shading here? Mm-hmm. Alright, so that's a no. Viewport shading. All right. Is that the... What's the difference here? We got viewport shading, method to display shade objects in 3D view, material preview. Oh, this is the rendered one. Okay, so not too great. We probably should add some color to this, because there's no reason for it to be lit in the back over here, unless that's the bounce. Hold on, let me just add in a sun lamp here. Okay. So obviously it's a little hard to see because I've got the top here kind of blocking us, which this brings up an excellent point. It's always good to name your stuff, and I neglected to do that. There we go. All right, it's a little bit easier with that out of the way. But basically, we've got the sun lamp, which basically will point light in one very specific direction. And again, remember, we're using the Eevee render engine here, so it's going to calculate things very quickly to get us an update as soon as possible, which is quite nice, but it's not 100% accurate. You will have to switch over to cycles, which, again, I talk about those in the texturing tutorial that I did last week. But back on point, we've got the sun lamp, which is going to be one specific direction. We also have the point, which, oh, okay, so it's got a very small fall off. That's why we weren't seeing it. Okay, so I'm going to go over to the light properties here. Let's increase that. No? Maybe it's just more power. That's very cool. So you can see here that light is being cast out from a very specific point in space. The radius here, actually, what does that control? Shadow soft size. Oh, okay, yeah. So the more I lower this down, the sharper the shadows are going to be. And that has to do with shadows and whether cast shadows specifically and the distance from the light source and the object. More about that at another point. But let's see what other lights we've got to play with here. Spotlights are super fun. Let's see. All right, that's the overall size. I think it's just... Do they measure this in watts now? All right, I guess because I made the scene super large, I need more lights to crank up the power. So let's increase the... Oh, that's the soft... that's the shader there for the lights. All right, so as you can see, we've got a light that will basically project light from a specific point, but it's going to do it radiating out. And then we've got the area light, which, as it suggests, let's actually scale this up a little bit. Increase the power! Is going to project light not just from a single point, it's going to do it from a specific area here. So you can see here, this is actually giving me some control over it. And the smaller I make it, the lighter it is, but the bigger I make it, the softer the light gets. So by combining all of these together, you can create some really interesting scenes. And we're going to play around with ours just to see what kind of interesting setup we can make. Let me go ahead and I just want to go back to this for a second. See how the smooth shade was doing on that. Yeah, we're getting a little bit of a... Oh, did I scale it on that? Oh, interesting. Yeah, we're getting a little bit of an odd rendering over here because of the mesh. So I'm actually going to fix that really quickly. Let's do Alt-M, center. There, that's a bit better. We don't see the one from the other camera angle, so I'm just going to forget about it for right now. So the question is, how do we want to light our scene? Now, technically, we are indoors here. So we could put the roof back on and then, light it. And it depends on if we want to be realistic or if we want to go ahead and, make it more fun, which... I think both have their merits. Why don't we start by doing something a little bit more realistically, and then we'll kind of experiment and change things up. Generally, however, you do need a couple different lights to get you through the day. We cover 3-point lighting in more detail in class. For today, let's just go ahead and experiment, and we will see how things shake out. So if we were going for actual light, let's say we were... going to use, I'm actually going to turn the roof back on here. Let's say we had some fluorescent bulbs up here. It would make sense to have an area light generating that amount of power. So let's say we've got an area light. Increase the power. See, is this working? Yes, it is. We'll have to crank that up a lot. Whoop. Square. Let's make this a rectangle. There we go. We can just duplicate it. Let's actually switch this over to cycles for a second. And it's going to take a little bit more time to calculate. But now you can see we've got these really like nice soft shadows, and it didn't really even take too much. We've also got some nice realistic sort of fall off in the corners here, because all the light is being poured down. It's bouncing around the scene. It's not even super dark under here anymore, though you could brighten that up. So let's actually go into camera view here. And I'm going to go ahead and just save the file. So let's go to Save As. Again, we're going to stick to our naming convention here. So let's go to Blender Tutorials. We're going to say Basics of Lighting. And today is, oh, what is today? The 9th, 4. Hey, come on. 4.09.20 underscore basics of lighting. Or we could just say table setup is fine too, because it's already in a folder with that name. Cool. And we're going to do a test render. So the reason that this is important is because while the preview will give you a pretty decent approximation, it's always a good idea to go in and see how things are behaving with an actual like full render, because sometimes the display cannot give you enough power. It has to go through, calculate it, and spit it out, not in real time, because that's a lot of data it has to crunch. So let's go ahead and I think it's up here in render image. And I have to double check if this is using my CPU or my graphics card, because you can use either one. And this is where, unfortunately, animation does take some significant amount of time, because we're using a physically lit engine, or a physically based engine. Always forget about the phone. Because we're using a physically based engine to render this stuff, it has to sample the scene with something called ray tracing. And essentially, it sends a ray out, it bounces around, it measures the light, and then we go through and actually gives us a final image. So we could just listen to some tunes and hang out here. And it is a little bit of a process. One thing I do think is a little weird is that we're not really getting a crazy shadow around the cone. That's part of because there's no light bouncing under these areas. Like here you can see under Suzanne and the cylinder here that we've got some really nice shadows that are kind of like falling off and getting basically that's the difference between like a contact shadow and a cast shadow. The contact shadow is when you're like it's from actually touching the object, and then the cast shadow is when the light like over here is like passing past the ear and everything. But everything does look pretty good, but I'm betting we can make it better. Like right now we just have general lighting across the board, so we can definitely play with things a little bit to make them pop a little bit more. I think what we're going to do is we are going to go ahead and use some spotlights to create some interesting highlights across items. The other thing we can possibly do is try and fill in some areas of shadow a little bit so they're not as dark. Depends on if you want high contrast or not. Back in the old Blender render, you would have to use multiple lights to fix that. Like normally, like in the old Blender render, when you would light something, the opposite side of it would be super crazy dark because it wasn't a physically based engine, so you would have to basically have a primary light and then a fill light. But we don't really need a fill light here because everything is pretty well evenly lit. Then that's due to the physically based render engine. And I think I'm liking everything so far. So let's go ahead and see what we can do to jazz this up a little bit. Let's go ahead, and I'm actually going to move this off to the side here. And I'm going to, well, let me show you what I'm going to do here. I'm going to change this to slot number 2. And what's cool about this is when we do another render test, we can change it from slot back and forth between slot 1 and 2. So when I start rendering next time on slot 2, we can see what the differences are. I am also going to change this back to Eevee just for right now, so we can work a little bit quicker. Wait, what was this? Workbench? What's workbench? I'm going to go back to Eevee, though. All right. So, I just want to hide this. Doesn't seem to impact any of the lights, so that's fine. It's just going to be a little bit easier to work. So let's slide this on over. And let's go ahead and create a spot lamp. Oh, Hawaii! We definitely need 100% more light. Give me light. He had to hurry out down here. So, you'll notice that each of the lights will have a slightly different, let me lower this just a smidge. There we go. Each of the lights will have different variables. I'm not going to go over them here in more detail, but the main ones we're going to look for are the power and maybe even the color, because we can also play around with that a little bit. So, let's start with Suzanne. And what I'm thinking is I want to get a nice highlight just around the eyebrows over here to kind of make her stand out a little bit. So let's go ahead and angle this. And I'm actually going to turn on show cone. This is great to show you where this is going to hit. I do want this coming from a little bit more above. So at this point, we've kind of like, you could actually just pop the lights in here, and it's actually pretty physically accurate. You know, the only way I could make it more physically accurate is by going to a similar setup, taking a picture, and seeing where things kind of fall short. But now, let's go ahead and move things more into the artistic. You see this all the time in magazines where there are highlights there that shouldn't be there. All kinds of stuff like that, just to make the image more appealing. And basically, we're going to do that by adding in some lights here. Alright, so we've got that on Suzanne. I'm going to turn this off for a moment. Let's crank up the power. Obviously, we're hitting the box over here. We'll have to fix that. Maybe instead of going that away, we can come more from the side. Let's try that out. We can try angling it as well. Actually, let's get really low with this. So right now, I'm just kind of trying to find a halfway decent angle that gets the effect of what I want here. Okay, so that's sort of doing it. Whoop. Alright, that's increasing the... Oh, that's interesting. That's a new interface for the cone. That's kind of nice. That's not what I wanted, however, so we're going to slide... Stop it. I want the red arrow. Thank you. I messed it up. And let's go ahead and come here. Move this over. I'm very picky right now. And that is half of what the battle is. Just being very specific about what you want. Stop it. So I know I'm not talking a heck of a lot. I'm just trying to make this work. All right, well, there's other settings we can adjust as well. Let's bring that back over here. Actually, I'm going to bring it up. Slide it over just a smidgen. All right, so I'm going to leave it there for right now. I can keep tweaking it, but I think what I'm going to do here is we're going to adjust the blend. And basically what this is going to do is it's going to soften things significantly. So that way it's not this crazy harsh line. And that will help me sort of back things off. And I can also decrease the power a little bit or go a little bit heavier. I think I want to go a little bit lighter in this case. So now we have this sort of like extra little glow on Suzanne. I can, however, also narrow the... Whoop, not what I wanted. We're actually... Oh, let's also turn the shadow off here because I do not want this casting a shadow. Let's try moving this up a little bit more. Maybe I'll lower the blend out a little bit. There, I think that looks much better. Okay, cool. So let's go ahead and I'm going to come out over here. Rather than re-rendering the whole image, I think this is Shift B in the camera view, and I can go ahead and select... Oh, okay, it doesn't do that anymore. Oh, how do you add the border then for the items? This is an excellent question. And my music disappeared too. Alright, I've got that back. Alright, so what we used to be able to do in Blender is we could partition off a specific section to render so we could see what it looks like. And I kind of want to figure out how to do that. So I'm going to Google it real quick and go to their wiki page. So let's see. Border render Blender. Because things have changed since I've used it. Answers, use Control-Alt-B. Oh, that's to clear. Shift B. How do I clear? No. Render region 2.8. Google to the rescue. Control B. Thought I hit... is it Control B now? Oh, it's Control B. Okay, here we go. Good. Alright, so now we're going to come over to slot 2. Well, we can go to render image. So now we've saved ourselves a little bit of time. Oh, wait, we're still in Eevee, though. Alright, hold on. Let's try that again. Take 2. But at least now we won't have to wait nearly as long. Alright, so let's compare that to our original one. And you can see that Suzanne is a little bit flatter in the front, but now we kind of have it popping out a little bit by having a little bit more light falling across here. I would like to get it so it's falling on the tops of her eyebrows, so I might actually have to angle it so it's coming down. I know I'm very particular about this, but hey, you know what? Sometimes that's the gig. So let's go ahead and slide this back over. We will move on, I promise, but this is bugging me, and I need to fix it. So let's set this back over to E. Oh, that's right. We can also keep it on cycles and it'll render the border, so that's nice. That'll keep our computer from going crazy bonkers. Here we go. Oh, okay, not quite. Yeah. I may actually have to end up using 2 lights to get that desired effect, and I don't want to spend way too much time or much more time on this. So I'm actually gonna leave it as I had it for right now. So we're gonna back it up. Alright, so we'll leave that there for right now. However, one thing I don't want this to do is to cast light on this box here. I just want to use this as basically a specular catch for Suzanne. So let's go ahead and see. Use nodes, mouse bounces, right. There used to be a way, and I'm saying that a lot because I haven't used some of the new details here in Blender. And what I used to be able to do is put this on different layers so you could only have the objects hit specific things. So let me see if we can figure out how to do that. Oh, we might have to put them on different render layers. That might be what it is. So let's see here. Where are them render layers? Show me the render layers. Passes, view layer, light. Script. Yep. Okay. Fine. Dimensions. No. Why can't I find it? All right. Options, effect, no. Sampling, render engine, device. Got a bunch of different settings. Sometimes you just gotta go through until you can find what you're looking for. Whoop. Unit. Scene. Ray visibility is not what we need. Oh, I just want the render layers. Where are they hidden? I swear I saw that earlier. Are there... Oh, maybe it changes in the menu? Because I saw them earlier. Ay. Guys, am I losing it? I swear I pointed them out to you earlier in the... Oh, we are using CPU, so we can change that to GPU. I swear I saw them earlier. Meh. Really weird. Render layers. Blender. Community, help me. Oh, was it passes? I must have overlooked it. Nope. It should still... Options transform. Should be this one. Oh, I was scrolled down. Dang it. But that only gives me the data, the light, levels, and shader. Man, I'm going to have to look into this more because they've changed so much since I last did anything with the view here. That's really annoying. All right, well, how do we salvage this? Let me do a little look in the user manual here. So we're going to look up lights. Actually, I'm going to move this over so you see exactly what I'm doing here. If I haven't introduced this, this is the Blender manual, and I will occasionally use this when they switch things around, because Blender got a huge overhaul not too long ago. Let me look up lights, and I don't know, I really do not like this part of the music here. I'm going to skip that ahead. Let's see, user... Physics, let's go to rendering, it's probably in there. Lights, work environment, common settings, cycle specific settings, spotlight, Sunlamp, nope, so we need render settings. Oh, really? That was it? Layers and passes, view layers. Okay, yeah, we saw that. View layer, disable, set indirect light only, enable in view layer. I want to do it specifically for lights. Maybe it has something to do with the collections. All right, hold on. Let's test something real quick. Let's put all of this in a collection just to get it out of the way here. Put that in the main collection. I'm going to close that. Let's just do a quick experiment here. Oh, God, my nose is going crazy. Let's just add a cube. And let's add a cone. We'll add a spotlight. Nope. Actually, we'll just add a sun lamp because that's a little bit easier to work with. Cool. All right. And, oh, what is... Oh, there we go. Ah, yeah, so... Oh, wait, it could be just because I have the border here. Alt-B. No, Control-B? Yeah, okay, cool. All right, so we've got this going on. Great. There's the light. So if I create a collection here, we'll say this is the cube. And let's put the cube in there, and let's put the sun. All right, so that's still lighting. Is there something I can do with that? Direct? No. Render for single layer. What is this? Only render the active layer. Only affects rendering from the interface. Ignores, well, for rendering from command line. Used for rendering. All right, I thought maybe I was onto something. Oh, that's animatable apparently. Used for rendering. Enable disable rendering of this view layer. Oh. Interesting. All right, that's a collection. That's fine. We're learning stuff. View layer. Oh, hold on. Can I create a new layer? I'm betting I can. Aha! Whoa, whoa, hold on. What just happened? All right, so I've got the... All right, so we can change the layers here. Okay, interesting, interesting. So that's the view layer. So how do I assign things to the specific view layer? Or view layer. Blah, blah, blah. All right, I know we realized we got off track a little bit. I was just showing you the basics of lighting. But I feel it's really important to show you this because you're going to get a lot more control depending on how you move the lights around and how you can position things in terms of what light is hitting what. Because right now we are attempting to separate out the lights so I can control how this looks on Suzanne specifically. I already gave you a basic rundown of how the different lights work, the render engine, and how to like get that all set up. But basically when it comes to lights, there's a few things that you can tweak, but the most important ones are generally color, position, and the rotation of the light. Shadows are a whole other thing. I think right now we're going to focus on figuring out how to get this to render for the specific render layers. But it looks like we're onto something here. I'm going to change this to... But it's weird. Everything went onto this layer. Cube layer. And can I unlink? What does this do? Ah! View layer. So let's actually grab all of this. We're gonna unlink. No, it's not what I wanted. Cube layer. Wait. View layer. Unlink. And if I come back over here to the... Oh, what did I do? Guys, I broke it. Hold on, let's back it up. Control Z! Alright, so I have a collection here. And I have a cube collection. Let's put that here and say this is a test. Okay, so we've got the cube layer. The view layer should have this up. Can I switch and will that... No, that won't activate. Okay. Duplicate link, select objects, instance to scene. And I believe these are the scenes. No, that's the scene. Okay, that's a different setup. We're gonna do a little bit more Googling here. We're gonna go back to the Blender manual. We're gonna figure this out, guys, one way or another. Rendering. Alright, workbench, lights. What if I just Google scenes? Rendering, markers, scene information. Oh, let's back it up. Let's go to scenes and objects, because that is what we want to work with. Object type, selecting, toolbar. Render settings, materials, world, light settings, limitations, cycles, all good. Oh, that's all going to that. Compositing. Oh, that's super annoying. Because I'm betting this is going to take me a little bit of time to figure out. So you know what? Here's what I'm going to do. We've got 10 minutes before the usual hour expires, and I really want to figure this out because this is super annoying. So you know what? I'm going to go ahead and pause this here, and I'm going to figure out what is going on. I'll be right back. Hi, guys. So I did a little bit of research, and I found out some interesting things. Apparently, Blender got rid of the light groups. And what you used to be able to do was go into Blender and designate what items would be on which belong to which light groups, so that way an item could designate where it received light from. And this was really handy because then it basically gave us more control over how we lit everything, and that is not in this feature. I tried to look around to see if they had any idea of when they would implement it. Sorry, my camera's bugging me a little bit, and I don't know when it's going to be added. It was a major way that I lit my objects for a long time. And it's just kind of annoying because it was very easy to use and simple. However, it looks like it's no longer in Blender, so that kind of messes up my tutorial a little bit. So we're going to have to adjust some things to kind of just work with the lights as is. So we have to be smart about it. With that said, there is a way to do it with compositing, but that's beyond the scope of what I wanted to cover today. So we're going to hold off on that. We're just going to be smart about how we do things. So if we come back to our monkey over here, remember how I said I introduced the different lights to you earlier? Well, there are some basic things you can control with the lights. 3 primary things. You can control the angle of the light. You can control the strength of the light. Generally, it's position depending on what light you're working with, which we'll put under a subcategory of rotation, and also the color. And this is where we got to get a little smart here. So if we go over to my spotlight here, we can select the color and make it something completely ridiculous. This is going to make it a lot easier for us to see where our light is falling. And this is actually what helped me kind of angle the light a little bit. So now I'm getting this really nice fall off here where it's highlighting the brows, a little bit of the top of the eyes, and just a bit of the nose here. We are getting a little bit of a bounce shadow here because it's basically, or a bounce light here because it's bouncing and hitting back under the cheeks, which I'm okay with that. So what we're going to do here is we're going to light the rest of our objects. We're going to go ahead and be smart about where the light is pointing, take that into account, and light our scene accordingly. This way you at least get to use the lights and play around with the power, the color, and the angles. Is this the optimal way to do it? Not really. There are better ways to isolate things, because this is going to limit your control a little bit. But without going into compositing, that's not really ideal. This was really just to show you how the lights worked, so we're going to stick with that. All right, so, and let's also bring this over here. You can see that this is what we started out with. That was our second attempt, but this is our third one. And I like this a lot better. Actually, I think that was a wrong render. Let's just re-render that real quick. Because I think I came in close. So now we have this really nice like highlight right here. Got a little bit on the nose. It is lit up a little bit over here, but we can try reducing the power a little bit, which is also going to reduce how much bounce we're getting in. And you can see now that the shadow is not being affected as much. So we're going to lower that down. Let's see. So this is 0 here. Let's actually turn that light back up to something ridiculous, say like a crazy purple. And we'll slowly crank this up because I want to see... Like, that's very obvious. I'm going to crank that down just a little bit. And I'm just doing this by left-clicking and dragging. I think that's pretty suitable. So now I will change this back to a white color. Cool. Now, obviously, this is also going to change depending on what material you put on here. For example, if we click on New in the Material section down here, and I change this to, say, Glossy, obviously, that's going to pick up light very differently. So there's a way you can set up default lighting in Blender so you can work on materials without worrying about lighting, but that's not what we're talking about today. So let's go ahead and just change this to, where is it? We'll just change that to diffuse, which is kind of what it said on by default. But I already like that lighting a lot better. So let's come back to the rest of our scene here. Was it Alt B? I always forget the... Nope, it's Control B. And I just want to see scene lights, scene world. Oh, that's like global illumination, so we don't want to mess with that. That's the render pass. I just want to hide. Just show me the final render. That's all I want right now. There should be some widgets that control that. Is there a view widget? Let's see, view widget. Alright, we're going to have to deal with that for right now. So let's come over to these guys over here. I think it would be cool to have the light being caught on like the outer edges and kind of like creating a nice rounded sort of shape over here. So let's actually go ahead. We're going to just go ahead and duplicate this light. We're going to rotate it. Turn on the show cone. And we're going to angle this so this doesn't hit any other objects. Obviously, that is extremely very, very bright. We will have to adjust that accordingly. And that's probably because there's a lot more flatter sides to this. So it's probably a little overpowered. But let's go ahead and move this over here and rotate it. And let's go ahead and hit Control B. We just want to highlight this section. See if I can angle it so it's not as direct. Let's go ahead and make this some ridiculous color so we can see where this is hitting. It's actually hitting like right down here in the crevices, which is what I don't want. Midnight. Would you give it a rest? My cat is yelling at me again. Unless you know how to fix a render issue, cat, I don't want to hear about it. You've been fed. You're happy. You're loved. Just give it a rest. All right, so let's see. We got that up here. Now, and that's the nice thing about 3D. You don't have to follow any specific rules for how lighting works. Like, this light's coming from down here. We can have this light come from the side. As long as it looks good, no one's going to know. You know, as long as it's not something, like, super crazy ridiculous, it stands out. So let's crank this up 100%. All right, so we're getting a lot of catch over here, and actually a lot in the shadows. Let's see if I can... Oh, that's actually kind of what I wanted. I wanted it along the outer bits over here. So let's see if I can move this back now. Maybe nudge it over a smidge. Hey, there we go. Yeah, I wanted it along the outer areas over here. Phone! Stop it! That's the shadows, which I do not want this to cast shadows, which is fine. And let's see here. Some max bounces I'm not going to worry about for this. So I think I kind of like that. Let's see what this looks like when we go back over here. Yeah, so we have a nice sort of bright effect over here. Ugh. I'm turning this off. Why is it whenever I record, everyone needs to get in touch with me all of a sudden? Alright. Alright, so that I think is going to look a lot better. We may just crank down the... Let me turn this off. No, I like that, actually. Alright, cool. So let's get something on these guys over here. I think I want to have the light so it catches the ring over here, comes down maybe a little bit on the top. So let's grab our spotlight here, We're going to duplicate it. And we don't want to do the Alt-D duplication because that means all these lights are going to be linked. So when I change the setting on one light, that means it's going to alter all of them. That I want these to be individual lights. So I think I'm going to purposely angle it this way. So that way we try to get it away from the cone. Again, let's make this some ridiculous color. Oh, it's even bouncing all the way down through the floor. Let's bring this back a little. Midnight, shush. I'm sure those of you with cats will sympathize with me. But basically what we're doing here is we're focusing on the position, the rotation, the power, and the color of the light. We are changing it back to, it looks like this is getting cut off a little bit, which is creating this really weird shadow. So let's go ahead and scale this up a little bit. So that way I can pull this back and get that included. We are going to catch a little bit of the monkey ear over here though, so let's try rotating this just away a little bit. And let's see what happens when we crank that up. Alright, yeah, so we're catching the outer parts over here, which is definitely like creating a little bit more of a contrast. Like if we turn this off. Can I just turn this off? Let's see. That's what it looks like without. So basically it gives us a little bit more contrast with the inner ring over here. Same thing on the bottom. It is illuminating this a little bit, which I'm not super thrilled about. So let's see if we can rotate that a little bit more. Maybe I can rotate it that way. Okay. Okay. I want to rotate it this way. Nope. Nope. I want the blue. Give me the blue thing. Thank you. We're getting that cut off again, which is making it look a little awkward. All right. Hey, go to the move tool. Thank you. Yeah, we're going to go over time by a little bit, but that's okay. We got kind of hung up by some changes to Blender. All right, so that is going to be cut off a little bit, but I'm not as worried about that. Though, I don't want as much illumination over here because this is flattening it out. One thing you want to do with your lights is use it to help define the shapes. It's not there just to illuminate objects. You want it to help define the object a little bit more. So I'm losing a lot of contrast over here, which is helping define that ring. So I'm purposely going to move this over to the side a little bit. So this is coming more from this angle over here. Because I don't want to hit the inside of that as much. The flip side of it, though, is we may hit the box in the background. Actually, we can move that right here. Nope, give me the blue one. All right, I think that's helping a little bit. Yeah, there we go. So now we're having a little bit more of a darker bit over here. Even like on the sides, it's already a little bit darker. This is illuminated. That's getting the side over here. I think that's a lot better. So now we're going to maybe just lower this down so it's not quite as powerful. Maybe we'll get that into the 500 range or so, or 600. Actually, I want to turn this off, see what that looks like without it. Yeah, it doesn't make this pop as much without it, for sure. So let's maybe just get that to 200. So it's a little bit more subtle, a little bit more. Let's try 400. Yep, I like that. All right, so we'll keep that. We'll set this back to white. I think the only thing I could do to improve this a little bit more is to angle it so it's not hitting the inside of the ring a little bit. I'm getting a little bit light over here, which is not what I want, but just for the sake of moving things along, I'm going to leave it be. And I'm also going to increase the blend. I was getting a little too much of a shadow over here before. All right, now we're going to speed things up just a little bit. I'm going to just duplicate this light, and we're going to preemptively. We're going to move this over, and we're going to create a nice, like, little rim on the outer part of this cube here. Or, cube? That's probably super close for that, so let's scale this down a little. And let's bring it up and angle that down a little bit more. And let's make it a ridiculous color. Scale down that power smidge. And let's slide it over so it's not quite as obvious. I want it more on the outer edge. Yeah, there we go. That's a bit better. That's also getting the cone too a little bit, but we'll probably put in our own light for that. Let's see what that looks like. Yeah, it's still a little powerful. It's kind of clashing a little bit because now it's muddying this out. So I may actually have this come from up above a little bit more. All right, let's see what that looks like. Yeah, that definitely helps it pop a little bit more. So you can see just by moving the light over, it helped me to define the form a little bit more. Over here, it was kind of flattening it out as we came across. So positioning your lights is very important. And now let's go ahead and just get that cone in here. Here we go. We're going to, again, go ridiculous. Go for like a, let's see, like a teal. All right, I'm going to turn this off for just a second. So we've got most of the light coming from up above. So that's actually already kind of flattening the cone out. I think it might actually make more sense to rotate this object because that, or maybe put a rim right here. Because let's try that first to see if we can use what we got. Because it's already pretty flattened. That does seem to help. Let's see. Move that back, move that over. Okay, that is helping to define it a little bit more. I'm wondering why I'm getting that really weird fall off. That, like, there's a very crisp shadow right here, which is kind of weird. So maybe we'll have this come from the front a little bit so we just don't run into that. Alright, so that's still kind of showing up. Let's see what happens when I just change this back to white here. Really weird. There's a very, like... Oh, maybe because this isn't subdivided? That might be why. So it's probably picking up the... It's probably picking up the exact edge. I think that's what it is. So let's go ahead and let's pop in. Let's actually just hop out of render view here for a second. just so our computer doesn't crash. This is a good time to save, by the way, before we start messing with stuff. So let's add in a... This is probably going to mess things up a little bit. Yep, we're going to have to fix that. So let's do... Oh, come on. Probably would help if I just hide the table. I think it's this one. Yeah, so we're going to hide that for a second. And let's grab these guys. Actually, I'm going to delete this face. Grab these edges. Extrude and scale. Scale. And I'm going to actually keep that at the edge here. Extrude that in again. Scale it. And I'm actually going to merge these at center. Whoa, hey now. At center, not cursor. Okay, there we go. So that's already somewhat better. Let's actually, we're going to have to remake this cone a little bit, methinks. Oh, my shoulder. Yeah, because we're getting a weird render. So let's go ahead and delete the vertex. And before I merge anything, let's put this down here. I'm actually going to just put that here. Actually, I probably don't need that. M at center. Yeah, that's still... Actually, let's do this. We'll put this here. Take this. Shift V. Slide that up. That way we at least minimize the triangles a little bit. Alright, let's get our table back. Go back into render viewport shading. Alright, there we go. That's a much softer edge. Alright, we're still getting a little bit of a render thing up here because this is all a bunch of triangles, but we're going to keep it because you can't see it from this distance. So we're going to go ahead and grab this light, go into the light properties, and we're going to, again, make it a ridiculous color. And we're going to actually slide this back over so it doesn't hit as many items. And now that's helping to define this shape a lot better. Change that back to white. However, we're going to have to blend this a lot, so I don't get as much of a crisp outline on the table. Is that still doing its job? It seemed to have faded a little bit. Alright, it does fade it quite a bit, so we're going to pull that back in. There we go. Cool, and we'll change that back to white. So let's go ahead and do an overall render, and we'll actually compare it to what we started with. So let's go to, let's come back over here. Go to render, render image. And now let the render party begin. With some best of synthwave back to the 80s. So apologies, this was a little bit longer than I intended, but Blender throws a curveball every once in a while, and you just got to adapt to it. And again, this is not the ideal way to do it, but the whole point was to show you how to work with the lights. And like once I maybe get some more familiarity with the new Blender system here, we'll do some more in-depth tutorials on like compositing and all that stuff. But for most like basic projects, this will be enough. Okay, all right, we're moving along here. I like how there's like a little bit of shadow underneath here that helps define this object a little bit more. Oh, we could also like experiment with adding like some lights underneath the table too. Oh, give it LED lights? That would be cool. I don't know why, but LED lights seem to be like the thing these days. I'm digging the synth wave. I think there was a light somewhere in my scene where I must have left it a tad bit green, because I'm seeing a little bit of green in here, but that's okay. Thanks for hanging with me today. I actually do like that light under here because it does add a little bit more richness to the scene. Like, granted, we didn't do a heck of a lot with color, but it was very helpful in helping define our shapes. Blup, 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 blup. And this is essentially what's going on, is that the Blender is rendering out each of these sections by sending out like little, like, you can think of them as like little tiny like specks of information going, okay, what color are you? Where does that light go? It bounces around and it sends it back out, and it will continually take more samples, which is why it looks really grainy at first and then it starts to smooth out. Generally, you get rid of this grainy look by increasing the number of, I think it's called samples. There's a specific variable for it, but you don't want to crank it up super ridiculously high because there's other things you can do to help smooth it out. But here we go. So here's our scene we've got now. Here's the original. And here's the new. Obviously, we made some changes over here. But I really like the new one because it makes everything pop a little bit more. This isn't bad by any sort, but if we look at like the basket of spheres over here, Suzanne, particularly this sphere over here, you can see that it does pop a little bit more. There's more, the shapes are more defined. Suzanne does kind of flatten out a little bit here. I think that's like one of my major critiques for this particular bit, is that it's kind of flattening her out because it's lighting this up a little bit too much. And we are losing a little bit of contrast in the ring, so I would have to move things around. But for the most part, I do like how it's illuminating everything. We are losing a little bit of contrast with the shadows down here, but that's because, again, we would have to go into compositing to go in and fix that. Because the shadows do add a lot. You can see it's a lot darker down here at the base, and it cements the items a lot more, which I really do like. But that's beyond the scope of what I want to talk about today, and I have to go back in and see how Blender would want me to do all the different layering and all that. I think I would have to dive into the compositor and set everything up. But what I would urge you to do from here is to create a scene of your own. Go ahead and make like a still life or something, and then just experiment with the way the lights work. Move them around, change the different like colors and the different, I guess they're doing it in wattage now, which is kind of interesting, and just have fun experimenting with the different types of lights, their position, their rotation, the color, and the power. Those are like all the basic settings that all lights are going to have. So just jump in there, see what you come up with. Is it going to be perfect? No, and that's okay. At some point during the future, I am hoping to dive into this a little bit more to show you how to avoid, like, obviously like this sort of like section where the shadow is getting a little too flattened out. But you get the idea. And keep in mind, it's not just to have you illuminate a scene to make it visible. It's to help define the forms of the objects. So that is something to keep in mind. Like here you can see like this is actually pretty flat, but now we have a nice gradient over here. I'm betting we could probably darken this down a little bit more on the side because that light is coming, probably hitting it a little bit. So be a little, like space your objects out a little bit so you have a little bit more to work with for this example. But focus on defining the planes of the objects, the different angles, and like how you can make the object appear even more 3D. That's what I would encourage you to do from here. All right, so we went a little over time, but I hope this showed you what the basic lights are in Blender, how they function, and how to kind of maneuver with them in 3D. Again, once I have a little bit more, you know, dove into the compositor a little more and this specific version of Blender, hopefully I'll come back and show you how to tweak things a little bit more and get more control over it. So with that said, hope you guys enjoyed. If you want to check out the previous video I did where we went over materials, which is a really cool way to like change how an object looks, whether it's like glass or metal or plastic, go over and check out the video I did on Intro to Materials. If you like what you've seen here, we run a bunch of different Blender classes and Tinkercad classes. For Tinkercad's more modeling, but for Blender we do a bunch of different animation courses, that kind of stuff. So I would urge you to check that out. Subscribe if you like these videos. Hit the notification bell if you want to know when we do more stuff. We've got live stuff at 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. Bunch of other stuff I'm not getting into. I'm already over time. You guys have a great day, and I'll see you later.